Hello, Tom Beal coming to you from a special spot. This is a nice spot here between Deerfield and Boca Raton, Florida, that I come to do some thinking. I do to come to do some contemplation. And it just hit me that, you know what, here we are coming up on Thanksgiving, and you're going to hear a lot of people talking about what they're thankful for, what they're grateful for, how blessed they are, how amazing their life is, and how thankful they are for that. And I wanted to remind myself and you that all of us are human. And regardless of having that gratitude and having that thankfulness, we also have stuff happening. And what does stuff mean? There's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be problems. There's always going to be difficulties that we're going to continually face until the day we're no longer here. And I want to share something that might spread some inspiration for you, a friend or a loved one that is going through some challenging times right now. And if you're definitely not in any challenging times, that's more reason to count your blessings. Because what I've found is if we're not in any challenging times right now, there's some right around the corner. And that's not out of a fear or a odd perspective. It's just part of this human endeavor that we, if we're above ground, deal with. And we're going to deal with challenges that relate to our health, our relationships, and our finances. With ourselves, with our family, with our friend circle, there's going to be 1, 2, or 3 of those happening at any particular time. Either we're just coming out of a big situation with our health, our relationships, or our finances. We're in 1, 2, or 3 of them right now, or they're right around the corner. And I just want to share with you that not only are we human and everybody has this, but regardless of who anyone is or what level of status or what level of success they've achieved, none of us get a pin that says, hey, congratulations, you've now graduated and you'll no longer have any more challenges, problems, or difficulties. Actually, the opposite is true. Just like the rap song, More Money, More Problems, that's how it works. We are just able to handle the bigger problems as we grow emotionally, as we grow intellectually, and our problem-solving skills improve. Now, I want to share with you a situation that occurred years ago for me that may lead to some inspiration for you, a friend or a loved one who's going through some challenging times. So this is bringing me back to the winter of 1991. I had recently dropped out of college in upstate New York. I was living in Farmington, New York with my mother and 2 sisters. And my mom and I were not getting along too well. So we finally agreed that she was kicking me out and I was leaving. I had $60 to my name. I had a 1982 Volkswagen Rabbit diesel with 250,000 miles on it and no radio. And I'm sitting in the parking lot of where we lived with my backpack worth of stuff, $60 in my pocket in this Volkswagen Rabbit diesel, wondering where to go. And at the time, I didn't want to burden any friends or family. So I had an aunt and uncle I could have reached out to. I had some grandparents I could have reached out to. I had some friends I could have reached out to, but I didn't want to burden them. So I said, you know what am I going to do? And my heart was telling me to go to New York City. My brain immediately fought that and said, that's ridiculous. You don't know anyone in New York City. You have $60 to your name, and that's just preposterous. But my heart kept telling me, go to New York City. So here I'm in upstate New York, Rochester, New York. It's about a 5.5-hour drive to New York City from where I was. And like I said, I didn't know anybody, and it just was a bad idea. But it had something that was ringing in my heart saying, go to New York City, go to Manhattan. So I got on the highway with $60 in my pocket in this 1982 Volkswagen Rabbit diesel and headed east on actually the thruway, I-90 in upstate New York, all the way over, and was going to New York City. And it was just absolutely preposterous and ridiculous. And this Volkswagen Rabbit diesel had no radio. So while on the drive, it hit me like, okay, I don't have a radio to sing along to, so what's next? And it hit me. I wasn't raised religiously in my childhood, but I said, you know what, this is a good time to talk to God. So I said, hey, God, I'm Tom. From what I heard, you know everything about me. That's pretty cool. But as you also know, I'm going to New York City, and I got a little issue that I'd like to bring up to you. I don't know anyone in New York City. I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm scared. So if you can help me out, I'd be happy to do that. But on the drive, as it continued, I said, look, I don't know what's going to happen when I get there. And by the way, I left at 9 p.m., so I was going to get there roughly 3 a.m. in the morning. I said, but here's the deal. If I'm meant to die in New York City, I'll die in New York City. If I'm meant to live in my car, I'll live in my car. If I'm meant to live on the streets, I'll live on the streets. And I guess I'll find out soon how this is going to play out. So the ride continues. I stop. I put diesel fuel in the old Volkswagen Rabbit. I stopped, used the restroom, etc. on the way. And roughly 6 hours later, I'm coming into the top of Manhattan. And I'd been there before. I had a college roommate that lived up above 125th Street. And as soon as I got past 125th Street, I'm like, okay, now what? Where am I going to go? What am I going to do? And I see a restaurant in the near path ahead. It's a Chinese restaurant. So I pull over, park the vehicle, go into this Chinese restaurant and sit down. I wasn't hungry, but I had nowhere to go. And the waitress comes over. She said, what can I get you? I'll just have a bowl of rice, please. She said, we have no rice. And I looked around like I was getting punked or something. Like, are you sure? And I said, you don't have any rice? Said, we just ran out of rice. What else can I get you? I said, well, I'm really not that hungry. I guess nothing else. Do you have a bathroom? She's like, sure. Pointed me to the bathroom. Went to the bathroom, splashed some water on my face, used the restroom, and then went back out to the car and got in the car, fired it up, went one stoplight ahead. And at the stoplight, someone walked in front of my car. And mind you, it's 3-something in the morning, and there's no one on the street. One person walked in front of my car. I couldn't believe it. I rubbed my eyes, I rolled the windshield down, and I yelled this person's name. And that person kept walking. I yelled his name again. He turned around, and here's a curse word. He said, what the F are you doing here? I said, what the F are you doing walking the streets at 3 in the morning? He said, long story, I'll tell you later. He said, no, seriously, what are you doing here? I said, well, my mom and I got in a disagreement. She kicked me out. I agreed, and I just drove to New York City. He's like, great. Well, I know you didn't come here not having a place to go. Where are you going? I said, well, actually, I did come here without having a place to go. And he couldn't believe it, couldn't wrap his mind around it. Long story short, he said, I live around the corner, you can stay with me. And who's this person? This person is my ex-stepfather at that particular time. So the person that was married to my mother when I was about 8 or 9 years old, up until 17 when they divorced. And so my ex-stepfather had been remarried and moved down to New York City. I hadn't communicated with him. I didn't know he was there with his new wife. And sure enough, I had this no rice moment meeting with my ex-stepfather, Cliff. And that's when, I went back and met his it was a nice surprise for his new wife. Like, hey, look who I found. Came back, and long story short, I ended up staying with he and Lisa for roughly 3 months in New York City. And that's what I call the no rice moment. And it reminds me, whenever I'm in challenging times, that there's more happening than we can understand. What are the odds that I would drive without a destination for 6 hours to get to New York City? I would see the Chinese restaurant, go in, order rice. They didn't have rice. Come out, get in the car, go to the first stoplight, and run into my ex-stepfather as he's crossing the road. And then he, took me in, and I stayed with him. So that was not arranged. That was arranged divinely, per se. And I just want to remind myself, and I want to remind you, that there's a lot of things happening that we can't quite understand. But if you look back on your history, you'll probably see, maybe not that exact scenario, but you'll probably see some scenarios where you followed your heart, you followed your intuition. And against all odds, circumstances occurred that led you to not only being something that was okay, but better than you could have ever imagined. So, regardless if you, a loved one, a friend is in some difficult or challenging times now, I would ask you to go back and reflect on the times when you thought, man, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this. I don't know if there's any, light at the end of this tunnel. And see how not only did you pull through those difficult, challenging times, but many times, many cases, miraculously. And there was some divine intervention, per se. There were some things that happened that you can't quite put a pin on. Here's how that happened. They just happened. And I want to refresh my and your memory that go in the direction that your heart and your intuition is calling you. Take one step at a time, what's yours to take, and watch how the road unfolds magically. So that's called the no rice moment story, and it's always fun to share because in live communications, I always get back people like, oh yeah, here's the time that happened to me, and they share with me a story that was just as miraculous. And the bottom line is, when I share this from stage, and I've shared it around the world from stage, I say, our paths crossing are just as miraculous as my path crossing with my stepfather at that particular juncture in Manhattan. Your whole life has led up to this moment. My whole life has led up to this moment. And I would say the same for you watching this video. Whether you're here watching it live or whether you're watching it as a replay, It's that miraculous. And it goes to show, one of my first mentors through books was Dan Millman. He wrote The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. He also wrote No Ordinary Moments. And that's encapsulates what happened in that no rice moment story, and what continually occurs in our life as we proceed, following our heart, following that intuition, taking the step, one step at a time in the direction that we feel called to go. And there are no ordinary moments. We can look back and see that no rice moment and say, wow, how miraculous is that? But we can also say, this point right here, right now, here at this particular park, you know, the father and son having fun, and you and I communicating here, is exactly as miraculous. There are no ordinary moments. They are, each and every one of them, as miraculous as the next. So just understand that. And one thing that I like to remind myself when I think of this and many of the other stories, when there seemed like no light at the end of the tunnel, that there's a question that I get posed to myself. I pose to myself in my mind that says, from God, do you trust me? Do you trust me? Take one step at a time and watch how it unfolds. And finishing with a joke. There's a joke that's always funny. You want to make God laugh? Tell her your plans. So make it clear that you're going to follow that intuition. You're going to get clear on where the destination is that you have in mind. Take one step at a time and watch how it magically unfolds. There are no ordinary moments, and you've got this. This too shall pass. One step, one day at a time. Watch how where it may have seemed there's no light at the end of the tunnel, it was waiting for you to step up, to take the steps that you knew were yours to take, and watch how it magically unfolds. All right, hope that was helpful. Hope that was inspiring. That's called the No Rice Moment story. I'd ask you to reflect on some times when you can see that, yeah, there's definitely more happened than we can explain, because it's not just random passing of the boats. There's some magic happening there that's pretty cool. So rest easy. Know that you got this. The too shall pass. I'll talk with you soon. And for those in the U.S., happy early Thanksgiving. Talk with you soon. Bye for now.